In July of 1924, a prospector by the name of Hank, not his real name, marches into the ranger station at Spirit Lake, Washington, looking for the ranger, Bill Welsh. And Hank tells him, "I shot a mountain devil." And Bill says, "You mean a bear?" "No, I shot a mountain devil." "You mean a wolverine?" "No, I shot a mountain devil." And thus begins the legend of Ape Canyon. The battle at Ape Canyon is famous in Bigfoot lore, but there is a whole story behind the story that few storytellers ever tell. So before we get into the long, harrowing night that the miners spend at the mercy of the ape-men, I want to lay out a bit of backstory to illustrate that this event was merely the culmination of 6 years of weirdness that the prospectors experienced. According to Yakima Indian legend, the apes are the Salatic Indians, a band of renegades much like giant apes in appearance, who have lived like wild animals in the secluded caves of the Cascades. They say that the Salatics migrated into Canada and in fact traveled the mountain ranges almost all the way to Mexico. And one of their favorite methods of travel was floating down the rivers by night like logs, and tales are told of them running away with squaws. If you ever harm one, they will get even. They never forget. Ape Canyon itself, named by the media for the ape-men reportedly encountered there, is a lonely, ominous spot in a wild area that extends to a point near Ape Cave, thought to be the longest unitary lava tube in the world. In the late 1910s and early 1920s, Fred Beck, a gold prospector and a very spiritual man, is with his partner Hank and 3 other miners near Mount St. Helens looking for gold. At some point, they are visited by a spiritual being, a large Indian figure dressed all in buckskin, who appears to them and tells them that there will be a white arrow moving before them. Follow the arrow and you will find your gold. One of the other members of the mining party can see the arrow in the sky all the time, clear as day. And Fred can see it most of the time too. So they start by the Lewis River, south of Mount St. Helens, and follow up the Muddy River, following the white arrow for 4 days. The going was slow across very rugged territory. And just when their patience is running out, they see the arrow soar up high, change directions, and swoop down. It hovers near the top of Ape Canyon. And that is the site where they blast out their shaft. Their mine, called the Vanderwhite, is located on the cliff of Ape Canyon, north side, and is in such rough territory that they have to use ropes to go up and down. The men work the area for 6 years with what seems like rarely a dull moment. Often they hear what sounds like a hollow drum in the earth somewhere, and something is hitting it, but they can never track down the source of the drumbeat. Before they made their cabin, the men were staying in a tent. The tent was below a little cone-shaped mountain called Pumy Butte. A little creek flowed nearby, and there was a moist sandbar with about an acre of area. And the men would go there and wash their cooking utensils and bring back fresh water. And early one morning, Hank comes back to the tents and says, "Come on, boys, you gotta see this." He leads them to the sandbar and takes them almost to the center. There, in the center of the sandbar, are 2 huge tracks about 4 inches deep. But there's not another track on the sandbar. In another encounter, Fred meets up with a beautiful young lady who invites him back to her camp where she and her father are staying about a mile away. And Fred, missing his wife and longing for some female conversation, accepts her offer, finds the camp, only to discover the woman sitting on a blanket with a fire going, but no camping equipment, no tent, no food, and no visible father, though she would ask her father for his input several times during their conversation. Fred eventually says goodnight and walks back to camp, but his mind feels like it's 1,000 miles away. He could hear the other men talking, but their voices sound like they're below him, like far away and soft and distant. Amazingly enough, Fred says, at the time, to him, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and no one ever saw her but Fred. Another time, they needed a pencil to write down some details about their claim, but discovered that no one had brought one. Everyone is understandably a little perturbed, but then it comes. A pencil in Fred's hand, and it has teeth marks all over it. And when that trip is over and Fred goes home, he shows the pencil to his wife, and she says, "That's a pencil I bought while you were gone. How did you get it?" She says their son, who's just a toddler, was chewing on the pencil, so she took it away and put it in a dresser drawer. She goes to the drawer and looks, but no pencil. And tracks. In their 6-year adventure, they had, from time to time, come across tracks on the edges of creek beds and rivers. Hank, a great hunter and a good woodsman, was always a little apprehensive after finding tracks. The tracks are large and seemingly human, and they know that no known animal could have made those tracks. The largest of them measured 19 inches long. And all of that history brings us to that night. It's the middle of July, and the prospectors have just received a report on their samples telling them that their samples are heavy with gold, and everyone is excited to start working in the morning. Now, they had all been hearing noises in the evenings for about a week. They would hear a shrill, peculiar whistling every evening. They would hear it coming from one ridge and then hear an answering whistle coming from another ridge. They also hear another sound that Fred can only describe as a booming, thumping, just like something beating itself on its chest. Hank asks Fred to go with them to the spring to get some water, which is about 100 yards from the cabin, and suggests they take their rifles with them just in case. Once they get to the spring, Frank yells, raises his rifle, and at that instant, Fred sees it. It is a hairy creature about 100 yards away on the other side of a canyon, standing by a pine tree. It dodges behind the tree and pokes his head out from the side. Hank takes 3 shots, and Fred can see bark scattering off the tree with each shot. Fred judges the creature to be about 7 feet tall, with blackish brownish hair. It has large ears and a head that is proportionate to its large, muscular body. Its shoulders are huge, but they taper down to a slim waist. It's hairy, but not shaggy, with a very stout physical frame, and looks more like a giant human than an ape. And Hank tells Fred, "Don't worry about that devil, Fred. I got him right in the head." It disappears from their view for a short time, but then they see it again, running fast and upright about 200 yards on the other side of the canyon. This time, Fred shoots 3 times before it disappears from view. They take the water back to the cabin and explain what just happened to the rest of the group. And they all agree, including Hank, that it's too dark to leave now, but first thing in the morning, they're all going home. Nightfall comes, and all 5 men are inside the pine log cabin. They had built that cabin themselves and had made it pretty sturdy. In the cabin is a long bunk bed where 2 men can sleep feet to feet, and the rest of them just sleep on the floor on pine branches. And at one end of the cabin is a fireplace made out of rocks. There are no windows in the cabin, so darkness comes quickly inside. Everyone has calmed down from the excitement of Fred and Hank's story, and they're all just kind of hanging out, puffing on their pipes, and talking about the trip home the next day. Each of them settles down in his crude but welcome bed and soon fall asleep. Around midnight, they are all woken up by a tremendous thud on the side of the cabin. Hank, who is sleeping on the floor, starts yelling and kicking. Some of the chinking, which is the mortar placed between logs of a log cabin, has been knocked loose from between the logs and has fallen on Hank's chest. He has his rifle in his hand and he's waving it around as he kicks and yells. Fred helps to get the chinking off of Hank and helps him to his feet. Then they hear a huge commotion outside. It sounds like a bunch of feet trampling and rattling over a pile of their unused roof shakes. The men grab their guns. Hank squints to look through the space left by the fallen chinking and can see at least 6 creatures roaming around outside. But it sounded like there were many more. And this is only the start of the attack. Many rocks are hurled at the cabin, some of them hitting the walls, some of them up on the roof where they hit with a bang and roll off. Some even fall through the chimney of the fireplace, and the attacks come in waves. And the men made sure to only fire their weapons when the creatures were actually attacking the cabin. The creatures would quiet down for a few minutes, and the men would stop shooting. Fred tells the rest of the party that if the creatures see that they're only shooting when they're being attacked, they'll realize that the men are only trying to defend themselves. They actually have clear shots at these things through that missing chinking, should they choose to shoot. And they do shoot when the ape-men climb up onto the roof. They shoot round after round through the roof, and they brace the hewn log door with a long pole that they take from the bunk beds. The creatures are pushing against it like live battering rams, and the whole door vibrates with every hit. The men respond by firing more rounds through the door, and the creatures push against the sides of the cabin as if they're trying to topple it over. But thankfully, that's pretty much an impossibility thanks to how well the men have built the cabin. Hank and Fred do most of the shooting, while the rest of the party crowd to the far end of the cabin, guns in hand. All seem stunned, their faces slack with shock, and the attacks continue the remainder of the night. Wave upon wave of rocks and banging on every surface of the cabin, with only short intervals of peace between the waves of attacks. And at one point, one of the creatures even reaches its arm through that spot of missing chinking and grabs an axe by the handle. But before the thing can pull it back out, Fred quickly turns the head of the axe upright so that when it tries to pull it out, it catches on the logs. And at the same time, Hank shoots at it, barely missing Fred's hand. The creature lets go, Fred pulls the axe back in and puts it in a safer place. And Hank starts singing. He didn't mean it to be funny. Hank is dead serious and sings with the hope that the mountain devils, as he calls them, might understand and go away. The attack ends just before daylight, and as soon as they know that it's light enough to see outside, they all cautiously come out of the cabin to see scattered on the ground hundreds of rocks. They don't even know where all of these rocks came from. Certainly not anywhere close to their cabin. And it's not long before Fred sees one of the creatures standing about 80 yards away, right at the edge of Ape Canyon. He shoots it 3 times and it topples over the cliff down into the gorge 400 feet below. And Hank says, let's get out of here as soon as possible. Don't bother to pack your supplies or your equipment out. Better to lose that stuff than to lose our lives. And they are all only too glad to agree. They bring out only what they can carry in their pack sacks, leaving over 200 $200. That's $3,200 in today's dollars in supplies, blasting powder, and drilling equipment behind. And Fred persuades everyone not to relate any of these happenings to anyone. But Hank soon lets the cat out of the bag. They make their way to Spirit Lake, and Hank immediately goes to the ranger station. Earlier, he had told Ranger Bill about the tracks, and Bill had told him, if you ever figure out what it is, let me know. And that is exactly what Hank intended to do. When they get back home to Kelso, Washington, Hank tells some of his friends, and somehow it gets leaked to the papers. And the Great Hairy Ape Hunt of 1924 is on. The men are all interviewed by both local reporters and reporters from Portland and Seattle. Even a big game hunter from England comes asking questions, carrying an elephant rifle. Many people flock to the Mount St. Helens area looking for the great hairy apes, or mountain devils as Hank likes to call them. Fred even goes back to the cabin with 2 reporters and a detective from Portland, Oregon. They found large tracks and they photographed them. And they found the inside of the cabin a disaster with the stuff that they'd left behind everywhere. Everything except that blasting powder. Fred doesn't know what happened to that. They did not see any of the ape-men, nor did they find any of them that had been shot. And decades later, after years of reflecting on the incident, Fred says to him the mystery of the ape-men is just one mystery in an ocean of mysteries. His only mistake was shooting them. If you're like me and can never have enough Bigfoot in your life, click here for more. Be careful out there, and we will see you again on the In-Between.